When it comes to the Black Knight Invitational, Cael Sanderson is going to get some much-needed answers that still remain about this Penn State starting lineup.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. My name is Zach Seyko. I am your host of the show. We are talking Penn State wrestling at the Army Black Knight Invitational this Sunday. There are tons of Penn State wrestlers entered into this one. Weight classes that could see 2, even 3 Nittany Lion wrestlers. And we're going to start with the weight classes that have burning questions still remaining in regard to this Penn State starting lineup. And I think it's fair to start with 197 pounds and then go to 157 as well as 125 and then look at the tournament as a whole. So 197 is promised. Josh Barr and Lucas Cochran are both entered into the Army Black Knight Invitational here. Barr versus Cochran, it's close. It is extremely close. And I don't want to leave out Connor Mirasola in this case because all 3 of them are going to be entered into this weight class. So there we go, 3 Penn State wrestlers entered into one weight class. But I'm excited to see not only Barr versus Cochran, but if my hunch about Mirasola is legit, because I've gone on the record to say that I think Mirasola is just as good as these other 2 wrestlers, maybe even better. He certainly has the highest potential, the highest ceiling of the 3. But all 3 are talented and definitely can contend to be All-America wrestlers, national champion. It's tough to say with some other talent in there, and that includes AJ Ferrari coming back for this season. Besides the point, to see which of the 3, because it really is razor thin. The margin, the gap in talent between any of these 3, it's almost an any given day type of situation. But Cael Sanderson has said that Mirasola is going to be redshirted here. So I am just eager to see where he is in terms of his development this early on. Can he win at the Black Knight Invitational, or is it really down to Barr and Cochran? It's going to be in the case for the starting lineup. In terms of the starting lineup, it is Josh Barr or Lucas Cochran's spot to lose, and Connor Mirasola is simply depth and allowing him to develop. Besides that point, Barr and Cochran, Cael has been hesitant to name a starter, and for good reason. It is close. I've already said that both of these wrestlers can be All-America type of talents, and they will be. I think if you go with Josh Barr, he absolutely lands in the top 8, might even be able to get to the semifinal. That's where I have a little bit of question. That's where I have some questions about him. Same thing with Lucas Cochran, though. Now, between these 2, I believe that Barr has more potential compared to Lucas Cochran. But who's better right now? We're not talking about lineups for 25, 26, 27. We are talking about the 24-25 season. So is Barr developed enough as a redshirt freshman where Lucas Cochran is a junior? And Cochran, it could very well be him. I have never been one to underestimate Cochran. I've said that he should not be overlooked. He is someone that has shown a lot in small instances. So going up to heavyweight, because that's where he would wrestle at points in time, because you have Aaron Brooks at 197, so you're not exactly going to get into the lineup frequently. But when Greg Kirkfleet needed a day off, needed a dual meet off, and Cochran was able to go and wrestle heavyweight and give up tons and tons of weight in comparison, right? He wrestled against a top 10 wrestler against Rutgers, and I bring up this example a lot. That was a top 10 ranked Slavakowski of Rutgers at the time. And Cochran beat him convincingly as a 197-pound wrestler. That told me everything I needed to know about Cochran going into his future at Penn State. So Aaron Brooks vacates this 197 spot, and here we are. They are on a crash course to the championships. I do wonder if Connor Mirasola is going to disrupt that. I think Connor Mirasola is as talented as they get. I really think he can be a multinational champion. And that's kind of the difference in expectations here. I think Josh Barr and Cochran eventually can have that, but I'm almost settled on the fact that I'm expecting Mirasola to be a 2-3-time national champion. I don't know that I want to go as far to say 4-time national champion, but Connor Mirasola is as talented as advertised coming out of high school here. So let's see if he upsets the apple cart here in this 197 class. But for the 24-25 starting lineup, it is Barr versus Cochran, and Penn State will get that answer because if and when they meet in the championship, the winner, that's going to carry a lot of weight in this matchup here. I think it's important to hash out 133 again because in a quick span of time, how quickly things move. So I originally said that we're going to have to wait till Sunday, the day of the Black Knight Invitational, to figure out if Braeden Davis is going to wrestle at 133. Well, at this point in time, in 24 hours, less than that, I think, Davis is not going to compete. It does not look like Davis will compete. He was originally registered, but then the pre-seeds were released and Braeden Davis's name is not on the list. So in terms of the official pre-seeds, which Flow Wrestling had put out for the Black Knight Invitational, Davis is not listed and Penn State has replaced him. So he was originally registered, as I mentioned, and he would have been the top seed, obviously. I will reserve my concern at this point about Davis's availability. Based on what Cael has said so far, I think Davis will be just fine. Davis is dealing with what it is to be a knee injury from that, or a leg injury anyway, knee or a leg injury from that Drexel dual meet. And he wrestled through it and he won. It was close, but he still won. He didn't have to compete. He could have opted out. And I think that shows a lot of toughness and grit about him. But based on the conversations about it, from Cael and just seeing him wrestle through, this is going to be a short-term injury as opposed to a long-term injury. So I look at this as precautionary and as it should be. I do not blame Penn State and the coaching staff and the medical staff. Cael Sanderson said, hey, the medical trainers, we're going to take their word as gospel here. So they clearly said Davis should not wrestle this weekend, and that's fine. Davis doesn't need to prove anything at the Army Invitational. With a long season ahead, more important Big Ten Conference dual meets, bigger fish to fry, if you will, and you have limited depth, there's no point here. Davis doesn't need to prove anything. And why risk further injury, re-aggravating it, or making it worse when you have bigger goals throughout the season? And Penn State has shown that. Penn State has shown, look at Carter Starachi's situation. They kept him out of the Big Ten tournament. So this aligns with what Penn State has done in the past, where they say, we have bigger plans, we have more important things to accomplish. One tournament isn't going to define you. So I agree with Penn State's decision. Obviously, Penn State agrees with Penn State's decision. But looking at the depth, the 133 isn't a sure thing here. Davis is now banged up. Nagao is banged up. He's around. I saw him the other day with Cael Sanderson's press conference. He was doing some simple muscle exercises and everything. So he is actively training. But Cael Sanderson said, and take that as in terms of I don't know if he's practicing, but he's there training. He's at the mat room. He's with the team. And Cael has said Nagao is working his way back from an injury. So is Gary Steen the answer at 133? He's going to wrestle this weekend. And then there's redshirt freshman Cael Garcia. Garcia has been the replacement for Braeden Davis. So I'm very eager to see. This is a monumental opportunity for Garcia to show what he is capable of because he has a lot of potential. Where is he in his terms of individual development? I'm eager to see what Garcia can show us at the Black Knight Invitational and would consider him a potential dark horse sleeper wrestler, if you will, to potentially make it deep into this tournament. So that's what to expect at 197 and as we pivoted to 133. The other couple of weight classes, one, toss-up. The other one, in my mind, seems to be a sure thing, but important to address how Penn State's going to approach it. That's 157 and 125. We'll talk about it more on the other side of this break. And today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more than or less than on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. You can run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups will stay in play even if one of your players gets hurt. If your player leaves in the first half and does not return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup alive. Prize Picks also invented the flex play, which means you can still cash your lineup out if it isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks does not win. Do you think Saquon Barkley is going to have more than or less than 95 rushing yards? Do you think Jalen Hurts is going to have more than or less than 1.5 passing touchdowns? You can cook up your hot takes with your friends and win real money this football season when you and your crew run your game on Prize Picks. Download the app today and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today, use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is Prize Picks. Run your game. 157 pounds is really intriguing because here we are, Tyler Kasak, who went on that incredible run to finish his true freshman campaign, going third at 149 pounds after he was supposed to redshirt in theory, but an injury to Shane Van Ness opened a door and he took over and took home bronze as a true freshman. And then moves up to 157 where Levi Haynes was, but welcome back Alex Facundo. So both of them are entered at the Army Black Knight Invitational. And this is where another burning question is going to be answered. And it is interesting, Kasak is the 1 seed and Facundo is the 2 seed when it comes to the 157-pound weight class. Now, first, I do want to address the fact that it was unclear where Facundo was going to land in the scheme of things in the offseason. Is Facundo going to wrestle at 174? Because that seems like the likelihood. And maybe Levi Haynes redshirts. Well, Haynes is going to wrestle at 74, and now Facundo is displaced. But now he might have found a home at 157. 157 became an option. He's made the cut, and it was rumored. I want to mention the rumor. I can't confirm this at this time, but it was rumored that Facundo had beaten Kasak in one of those head-to-head matchups to judge who was going to be the starter in this lineup, and it was Facundo convincingly. But there are going to be more opportunities. They are not going to be judged off of that one head-to-head matchup, and here is another one of them. To go through, and this is intriguing because you go through this tournament aspect of it. You have to wrestle multiple matches in the same day and then get to the championship, and then who is the Iron Man at the end of the day? Is it Tyler Kasak or is it Alex Facundo? Now, let's not forget, Kasak just picked up an unofficial top 10 win a week ago because the NWCA All-Star Classic matches do not count towards an official record. But it is an unofficial win and deserves a lot of credit taking out a top 10 opponent. Kasak is a title contender at 157. Facundo is also a title contender at 157. I do mean that. Penn State legitimately has 2 wrestlers that can be at the top of the podium at 157. This is another one where it's truly a 50-50 coin flip. If I'm being honest, if you want me to make my judgment call here, I am leaning Facundo over Kasak. And I've explained my reasoning before, but I think it's important to hash it out again. Facundo is more experienced. Facundo has taken both red shirts. He redshirted once and then had the Olympic red shirt, which he is coming off of. And that Olympic red shirt was so important because he was training for the Pan Ams. He won Pan Am gold. He ended up wrestling at the Olympic team trials. So Facundo has picked up technique and skills and knowledge along the way that Kasak still does not have yet. The experience is the difference. And remember that Facundo actually beat Levi Haynes at the Olympic team trials. Now, granted, it was freestyle. To me personally, that still speaks volumes. When looking at it from Penn State's perspective and what Cael Sanderson wants to do with the program long term, it benefits Penn State and Tyler Kasak if Facundo is the guy at 157, because then Kasak would, in theory, opt to take his first red shirt. And that's what makes the most sense here, because Facundo doesn't have another option. He's out of red shirts here in this case. So but Facundo needs to earn it. You don't just make him the guy at 157 just because, well, Kasak has the opportunity to redshirt, so we're going to go with Facundo. No, Facundo and Kasak are battling here. However, it does make sense if Kasak is trailing Facundo in this case, and Facundo is the better wrestler, which we will get another answer here at the Black Knight Invitational, then Kasak taking his first red shirt makes sense. But Kasak is not going to go quietly here. He is not. I can only imagine. I bet he believes that he can and will win against Facundo and get revenge based on the rumor that's been circulating that he already lost to Facundo once. So all that stuff I just said about Facundo, I don't think it matters to Kasak. He fully intends to take that 157 starting spot. Let's look at 125 again. Luke Lilledahl, unranked. Well, he's actually ranked by Intermat now as the number 33 wrestler, but in terms of the preseason rankings, was nowhere to be found because he is a true freshman. But he will be the top pre-seed at the Black Knight Invitational, and this is just another lineup battle because to open up the season media day for this year. And I asked Cael, and I said, hey, is it safe to say that Luke Lilledahl is going to be the starter? And in short, the answer was no. And he gave a lot of props to Kurt McHenry. Kurt McHenry's been around for a long time, wrestled at Michigan, transferred in. I mean, he's the veteran. And I think it is close. From what I've heard, it is close that McHenry is really giving Lilledahl a run for his money. But Lilledahl, it is, like I've talked about some of these other recruits, specifically Connor Mirasola in this conversation, but we are going to talk about Zach Ryder and some others in the final segment here. Luke Lilledahl, I mean, he brings in all of the accolades. If Kurt McHenry had won a world championship, been on the podium in multiple world tournaments, it's a different story. That's Luke Lilledahl. Lilledahl has beaten wrestlers who are either comparable to McHenry or better than McHenry. Former All-Americans, former champions who are now on the senior circuit. Lilledahl was beating them as a high school wrestler. So what's going to change? Nothing. Luke Lilledahl is only going to get better, and he's a true freshman for Penn State. So it is no wonder that Lilledahl, right out of the gate for the Black Knight Invitational, that he is the top pre-seed here. There is no doubt here. There are limited questions. I think it is interesting if these two happen to meet in a semifinal or the championship at 125. I am eager to see that head-to-head matchup to see where the gap is. Is McHenry as close as we are led to believe? Or is Lilledahl really pushing the pace and getting further and further ahead in his development? Already positive intel on just the fact that Luke Lilledahl will be, quote-unquote, a fan favorite, if you will. Shane Van Ness had a lot of high praise for him when we talked to him this past week. So Lilledahl, I think, is going to be I know he's going to be the guy, but he needs to prove it. He needs actual tangible results that we see. Didn't get to see him against Drexel because they didn't have a wrestler at 125. We will get to see him at the Black Knight Invitational, and he is, I expect him to win at that 125-pound weight class. So last but not least, we're actually going to go through the full tournament breakdown, looking at the pre-seeds, all the Penn State wrestlers that will be involved at the Black Knight Invitational, and just which wrestlers I am most eager to see and how they perform this weekend. Penn State is sending the whole cavalry to Army. We're going to talk about it more on the other side of this break. And today's show is brought to you by ZBiotics. ZBiotics Pre Alcohol Probiotic Drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Now here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into this toxic byproduct in the gut. It is this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. So pre-alcohol, what does it do? It produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night and drink responsibly, and then you will feel your best tomorrow. Now here's how to use it. Step 1, drink pre-alcohol. For the best results, make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. Step 2, drink responsibly, pace yourself, hydrate, get a good night's sleep. And then step 3, enjoy tomorrow. Wake up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day. Go to zbiotics.com/LockedOnCollege to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Locked On College at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they will refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/LockedOnCollege and use the code LockedOnCollege at checkout for 15% off. And today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet just $5. $5 and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get that hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out all the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more. And it's all on the same page where you place your bets. It's that convenient. It's that simple. Just head over to FanDuel.com to join today. And let's head over to FanDuel.com and look at the lines for Penn State versus Minnesota. Penn State is an 11.5-point favorite, minus 490 on the money line, plus 365 for Minnesota. And the total is set at 45.5. If you like those lines, you can bet them right now over at FanDuel.com. And remember, you will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Again, that is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Penn State is sending the whole cavalry here. Everybody, 2 or more wrestlers are going to be at each weight class for Penn State at the Army Black Knight Invitational. And here's just a handful of wrestlers that I am most eager to see. And they are the young and upcoming wrestlers for Penn State. Because I know what Carter Starachi can do. I know what Greg Kirkfleet can do, Levi Haynes, etc. But Luke Lilledahl, Kaiason Garcia, Zach Ryder, Connor and Cole Mirasola, the future of the program. It's going to be nice to see, okay, how are they developing? But against wrestlers who are either equivalent to them or better than them. For example, Zach Ryder at 184. How close is that bout between himself and the 4-time national champion Carter Starachi if and when they do meet? I'm also going to go, when I go through the weight classes and based on the pre-seeds, I'm also going to point out which ones are most likely to get double Penn State, get an all Penn State championship here. But I look at that one at 184 and I want to see, okay, Zach Ryder as the former top overall pound for pound recruit out of that recruiting class, how close is he to Carter Starachi at this point in time as a true freshman who is going to take this red shirt? Same thing, Connor Mirasola. I think he is real. I think he's very talented. I've made that clear. How close is he to Josh Barr and Lucas Cochran? Why does Penn State feel the need to redshirt him? Or is there a conversation? Look, I know they plan to do it, but can Connor make this conversation interesting and say, I don't need the red shirt. I'm ready to go right now. Hypothetically, of course, but Penn State's official plan is to redshirt both he and his brother Cole, his twin brother, who is at heavyweight. And for Cole, it's going to take a longer time because since there is no weight class for 215 or 220 pounds, which would make more sense for Cole, he has to go through some true development. I think Greg Kirkfleet is wrestling at 200 or 245 pounds. So Cole is going to have to put on 30, 40 pounds of muscle to catch up to Greg while developing the technique for that true heavyweight spot, since he was wrestling right at the equivalent of, it was 92 kilos, I think Cole was wrestling at there. So he's got a longer path for his development, and his red shirt makes sense. But what is he doing in the present? How close is he right now at this moment in time as a first-year heavyweight at Penn State? So let's go through the list of pre-seeds and talk about which weight classes will most likely have 2 Penn State wrestlers in that final. So at 125 pounds, Luke Lilledahl is going to be the #1 seed for Penn State. Charlie Farmer of Army, Robert Segaris of Long Island, and Tyson Lane of Gardner-Webb. I also think it is important to point out which schools will be involved here too. So Army is obviously hosting this, but Binghamton, Bloomsburg, Columbia, Gardner-Webb, Long Island, Michigan State, Penn State, and Rutgers have been invited. So Rutgers and Michigan State, those are Big Ten Conference teams, and Army has some ranked wrestlers as well as the other schools. But in terms of the quantity of talent there, those are the schools that are going to have wrestlers closest to the end of this tournament here. But that's what it looks like at 125. And remember, Kurt McHenry is there. So he is not officially seeded in the top 4, but he is going to wrestle. And I think 125 will be Kurt McHenry versus Luke Lilledahl. Obviously, Farmer, Segaris from Army and Long Island respectively could be there and should be there. They're ranked as the 2nd and 3rd seeds. But Lilledahl and McHenry will be in the championship at my mind at 125. Remember, at 133, Braeden Davis would have been the top seed, but he is not entered, and Kayason Garcia has replaced him just as a precaution for this injury. It makes sense. We already talked about that. Ethan Bergink of Army, Tristan Lewan of Michigan State, Gary Steen of Penn State, and Boris Whitmer of Columbia. Those are the top 4 pre-seeds for 133 pounds. Maybe it's because I'm over ambitious here when it comes to Cael Garcia, but I could see him being in the championship. He would need to upset some people along the way. I don't know that this is going to be an all Penn State championship at 133. If Braeden Davis was in this weight class, maybe I could see Steen versus Davis, but in this case, I don't think it's going to be an all Penn State final at 133. But I'm eager to see how far Garcia gets there, and Steen should make it. I think it would be a little bit of a disappointment if Steen doesn't as that 3 seed. At 141, Bo Bartlett is entered in, and for Penn State as well as Cael Sanderson, I think Bartlett wins here. Todd Carter of Gardner-Webb, Braeden Basile of Army, and Rich Trainer of Army as well round out the pre-seeds here. Bartlett should win this. I would be surprised if Nasdeo makes it to the championship. I think he's wrestling above his natural weight. I think he would be better at 133, but Penn State has him at 41 for a reason. 149 pounds, Shane Van Ness is the number 1 overall seed. No surprises here, and that what an impressive win, 16-4. At the NWCA All-Star Classic. Trey McDaniel of Army, Andrew Clark of Rutgers, and Richard Fettelin of Columbia are going to wrestle. They are the other pre-seeds. Now, Connor Pierce of Penn State is also, this is a crowded 149 weight class. Shane Van Ness versus Connor Pierce, I think it can happen. I don't think it's likely because of how many wrestlers are here, so I'm not anticipating it, but I'm not going to be surprised if it is Van Ness and Pierce in the final. At 157, Tyler Kasak and Alex Facundo are their top 2 pre-seeds. Drew Pepin of Gardner-Webb and Dakota Morris of Army. Those are the top 4 there. And Penn State just has those 2 at 57. It's a crash course. If Kasak and Facundo do not make it to the championship, I will be extremely surprised. That's what everyone should expect. It is a crowded 57-pound weight class here for the Black Knight Invitational, but that's going to be the championship. You can bank on it. 65, Mitchell Messenbrink of Penn State is the number 1 wrestler. And then the number 2 pre-seed is Gunnar Filipowicz of Army, DJ Shannon of Michigan State, and Cesar Alvin of Columbia. Those are the top 4 pre-seeds. Aurelius Dunbar of Penn State is also going to be in there. I think Filipowicz and Messenbrink makes a lot of sense here at 65. I really don't see a different championship there. Maybe Dunbar can surprise here at 65 pounds. At 174, Levi Haynes and Matt Lee are the top 2 pre-seeds here. Dalton Harkins of Army and Cooper Haas of Army are the other 2 at 3 and 4. I expect Haynes to win this, and I think Matt Lee will meet him here at the 74-pound championship. Then let's move to 184 pounds. Carter Starachi is going to be the top seed here. Brian Saldano of Rutgers and Shane Cartagena Walsh of Rutgers, as well as Anthony DeLacio of Long Island. But Zach Ryder is in this class. He is not one of the top 4 pre-seeds here. But I'm anticipating Starachi versus Ryder in the championship. Of course, Brian Saldano, as the number 19 overall wrestler per flow of Rutgers, he could very well be in this conversation, in this championship bout against Starachi. Starachi wins, but is he going to meet Saldano or is he going to meet Ryder? And then at 197, Lucas Cochran is the number 1 seed, and I think that's interesting for the pre-seeds that it's Cochran and not Josh Barr, because on Intermat, Barr is ranked number 23 overall. Per flow, Cochran is ranked 21. So I think that's just an interesting little discrepancy here. Cochran is number 1, Barr is number 2, Cale Whistler of Michigan State is number 3, and Austin Kohlhofer of Army is number 4. And don't forget, Connor Mirasola is in this 97-pound weight class too. So is it going to be Cochran versus Barr in the championship, or does Connor Mirasola pull off the upset? It is likely that he could do it along the way. And then let's finish up with heavyweight. So Kirkfleet is obviously your number 1 pre-seed at 285 pounds. And interestingly enough, Cole Mirasola, twin brother to Connor, is going to be the 4th seed at the heavyweight spot. You have Lucas Stoddard of Army as the 2 seed, Charles Tibbetts of Binghamton as the 3 seed. So we're actually not going to get a Penn State championship here, an all Penn State championship, because it's going to be an all Penn State semifinal. So Kirkfleet has to knock out Mirasola. I don't mean to say it like that, but Kirk Fleet should be the anticipated champion here at the end of the day. No disrespect to Mirasola. This is his first season wrestling as a heavyweight, and he's redshirting for a reason in this case, but it will be enticing and fun to see in that semifinal bout. But expect Kirk Fleet to win the overall championship. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. If you got any predictions, if you have any expectations for this Black Knight Invitational or any predictions for this Penn State lineup at any of the weight classes we talked about, let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. I'd really appreciate it, you being a part of the conversation. If you could, please leave a like on this episode, share it with friends and family, and if you're not already, become an everyday or subscribe to Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts for the latest conversations around your favorite Penn State sports teams.